I always enjoyed my work, and the late-night walks home afterward had become a sort of peaceful ritual. The quiet streets, the cool breeze, the distant hum of the city winding down it was calming, even therapeutic. Walking helped me clear my mind after long hours at the office, and I often told myself it was good for my health too. But lately, something strange had started to happen. It began on a Thursday night. I had stayed late, finishing up a project, and left the office around 11 p.m. The streets were empty, just as I liked them. Streetlights cast their warm glow, painting long shadows across the pavement. As I made my way home, I noticed someone standing under a lamppost across the street. He wasn't moving, just standing there. At first, I didn't think much of it. It's a city, after all. People are always out for one reason or another. But as I continued walking, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. No matter how far I went or which direction I turned, the man was always there, never moving. Always under a lamppost, always watching. My heart began to race. I tried to be logical, to convince myself it was just coincidence, or my imagination running wild after a long day. But the feeling wouldn't go away. The air felt colder, the night quieter, and the figure closer. When I finally reached my apartment building, I hurried inside, locked the door, and stood there for a long moment, listening. Nothing, but I couldn't shake the chill creeping down my spine. Even as I lay in bed, the image of that man, frozen under the streetlight, stayed with me. The next night, determined not to let fear control me, I took a different route home, longer, but more populated. It didn't matter. Halfway down a completely different street, there he was again. Same posture, same eerie stillness, same lamppost. My stomach turned. This wasn't just strange anymore. It was deliberate. I changed my path again, cutting through alleys and taking obscure turns, but it was always the same. There he was, always following, always just out of reach. He never came too close. It was like he enjoyed the distance, letting me know he was there, but never doing anything more than watch. It happened every night, without fail. No matter where I went, he was there. One night, I even ran to the police station, explaining everything to the officer on duty. They took a report and sent a patrol car to my street. When they checked, they found nothing. No one matching the description I gave them. They told me to let them know if anything else happened. I felt so stupid. I wasn't imagining either was there, I was sure of it. But without any concrete proof, the officers couldn't do much. Days went by, and I didn't see him again. I tried to convince myself it was over, that maybe it was just a bad stretch of luck. Then, on the 7th night, I found something on my doorstep. A small, black object wrapped in a scrap of paper. My fingers shook as I unwrapped it, a black glove. And inside the glove, a note. "You can't escape." My stomach churned. I felt the walls close in around me. I rushed inside, slammed the door shut, and immediately called the police again. This time, they took it more seriously and began canvassing the neighborhood for any sign of the man I described. But again, there was nothing. No fingerprints, no witnesses, no video surveillance. It was as if he had vanished. I couldn't shake the feeling that he knew everything about me. My roots, my habits. He was always one step ahead, always there when I least expected it. But what terrified me the most was that I never saw his face. Just a shadow, a shape in the dark, and that's all he ever was. The note stopped after that, but the dread never left. I couldn't even sleep without the feeling that he was watching. It was as though he was just waiting for me to slip up, waiting for me to walk into his trap. Finally, after weeks of sleepless nights and constant anxiety, I decided to leave. I packed my things, moved to a new apartment in a different part of town. I thought that would be the end of it. I thought I was safe. The first few nights, I slept better. The darkness wasn't as oppressive. I started to relax, to think that maybe I had been overreacting, that maybe it was all just in my head. Last night, I woke up at 3 a.m. to frantic banging on my door. My heart stopped as I lay there, frozen in fear. The knocks came again, louder this time, sending a jolt of panic through me. A message appeared on my phone. "I know where you are." I didn't call the police. Instead, I grabbed my wallet, phone, and keys, slipped out the back door, and ran through unfamiliar streets, adrenaline pushing me forward. Hours later, I found a diner, called the police, and felt a brief sense of relief. I moved far away not long after that. A new job, a new apartment, a new sit of everything changed. At first, I was constantly looking over my shoulder, jumping at shadows, and avoiding walking alone at night. But with time, the fear began to fade. The memory of that figure under the lamppost became less sharp, less immediate. I convinced myself it had all been in my head stress, sleep deprivation, maybe just a string of eerie coincidences that I'd blown out of proportion. For a while, life felt normal again. I walked home from work without fear. I laughed at myself for how paranoid I had become. I told friends about the experience like it was some spooky story from the past, something that didn't touch me anymore. I even began to enjoy the late-night walks again, though I never quite felt as calm as I once did. But every now and then, when I'm out late and the streets are quiet, I feel it again, that uneasy, crawling sensation on the back of my neck. The air feels a little colder, and my steps quicken without me realizing it. My eyes dart to shadows between buildings, to alleyways, to dimly lit corners under flickering streetlights. And in those moments, I can't shake the feeling that maybe I didn't escape after all. That no matter how far I ran, no matter how much I changed, he's still out there somewhere. Watching, waiting, always just out of sight, but never too far behind. I was always frustrated after my late-night shifts at the diner. The clatter of dishes, the buzz of the fluorescent lights, and the endless demands from tired, cranky customers wore me down night after night. By the end of each shift, my feet ached. My back throbbed, and I felt like I had nothing left to give. The air inside always smelled like burnt coffee and grease, and no matter how clean the place looked, it never felt fresh. But despite the exhaustion, I always found comfort in the walk home. The moment I stepped outside and felt the cool night air on my skin, it was like I could finally breathe. The streets were quiet, the world slowed down, and for those few blocks, I felt at peace. The rhythm of my footsteps, the rustle of leaves, the occasional chirp of a distant bird, it all helped clear my mind. My body still felt tired, but something about that walk made my stress melt away. But then, something changed. It started off subtle. One night, as I turned the corner just a block away from the diner, I saw him. A man standing under a lamppost, still as a statue, his features obscured by shadows. I barely gave him a glance, assuming he was just someone out for a smoke or waiting for a ride. But the next night, he was there again. Same spot, same posture. I paused for a moment, but kept walking, trying to shrug it off. After that, I started to notice him every night. He never moved, never spoke, just stood there, watching. At first, I told myself it was just coincidence, a trick of the mind brought on by fatigue. But deep down, I knew something wasn't right. The peaceful walks I once cherished now filled me with unease. The fresh night air no longer calmed mate, carried a chill I couldn't shake. Then, it escalated. One night, as I walked down the street, I heard its footsteps. Soft at first, almost drowned out by the sound of my own. But then, they matched mine. Step for step. I felt a cold chill wash over me as I turned around, only to find the street behind me empty. My heart raced. I was being followed. I didn't dare stop. I quickened my pace. The sound of the footsteps getting louder, closer. As I reached the corner of Maple Street, there he was, just standing there, eyes locked on me. I froze. My breath caught in my throat as he took a single step forward, a slow, deliberate movement. I didn't wait to see more. I ran. I ran all the way to my apartment, fumbling for my keys, desperate to get inside. The next day at work, I couldn't concentrate. My mind kept replaying the events of the previous night. The footsteps, the way he watched me, like I was prey. I knew I couldn't keep walking home alone. I needed help. So, when my shift ended, I asked Emma, my colleague, if she could give me a ride. "You okay?" she asked, noticing the worry in my eyes. I forced a smile. "Yeah, just a little freaked out. There's this guy who's been following me home." Emma frowned, but nodded. "I'll drop you off." From Aces. It felt like a small victory. At least for that night, I wouldn't be alone. We drove through the empty streets, the silence thick between us. As we neared my apartment, I felt a knot in my stomach tighten. I couldn't shake the feeling that he'd be there, waiting. But when I got out of the car and looked down the street, there was nothing. I let out a breath, relieved. Maybe I was just being dramatic. But as I reached the door of my building, I froze. The sound of footsteps again. Slow, deliberate steps that echoed in the quiet street. My stomach dropped. I spun around, expecting to see him, but there was no one. I was alone. Or so I thought. As I turned back to the door, I caught a glimpse of movement in the corner of my eye. I turned just in time to see him standing at the end of the street, just like every other night. He was closer now. Much closer. The air felt thick with tension as he stepped forward. My heart pounded in my chest. I couldn't move. His face was still hidden by the shadows, but I could feel his gaze on me, piercing through the darkness. He took another step, and then another. He was almost at the entrance of my building. Panic set in. I bolted for the door, my hands shaking as I fumbled for my keys. My pulse raced in my ears, drowning out everything around me. When I finally opened the door, I slammed it behind me, breathing heavily, my back pressed against it. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't stop shaking. I had to tell someone. I needed to be sure I wasn't losing my mind. But as I glanced around my apartment, a chill ran down my spine. Something was off. The room felt different. I walked toward the kitchen, and my heart nearly stopped. On the counter was a note. "I'm always watching." I stumbled backward, my mind racing. There was no way. I had locked the door. But then the truth hit me. He wasn't just following me. He had been here before. He knew where I lived. I heard a soft cough behind me. My stomach dropped. Slowly, I turned and there he was, standing in the doorway, his eyes locked onto mine. And he wasn't a stranger. He was my landlord. My pulse pounded as he took a step closer, his expression unreadable. I had lived here for 2 years, trusted him with the key to my home. But now, in the dim glow of my bedside lamp, I saw something in his face I had never noticed before. Something dark. "You shouldn't have called anyone," he said softly. My breath hitched. Within seconds, the front door burst open. Officers stormed in, shouting commands, their weapons raised. He didn't even flinch as they swarmed him, forcing his arms behind his back and snapping on the cuffs. "You're under arrest," one of them barked, dragging him away. He didn't fight back. I stood frozen, my heart pounding in my chest. No matter how much time passes, I know one thing for sure: I'll never feel safe walking alone at night again.